Good morning, everyone. It's another week with the time flies. We have one section today is regarding commercial lease. Last week we did the training section commercial sales for small business. So this week we'll be talking about commercial lease. And tomorrow, Thursday, 11 to 12, we'll be conduct another training section regarding APS. That's how to prepare the offer and how to do authentic signing. So I wish you everyone coming to the training section tomorrow as well. And the week after, next Wednesday, I will be conduct another training section regarding commission issue. That means everyone working so hard and everyone working for yourself, for the self-employed. If you don't get your commission, you work for nothing. So next Wednesday, I'll be talking about it. So I wish everyone can come to attend this section as well. And at least you learn how to protect your commission during your transaction. Thank you. Yeah, let's start today's for this section regarding commercial lease. Really, as I mentioned last night to our WeChat group and from time to time, even last week, even last night, and some agent called me, David, I got the commercial lease. How do I handle it? How can I do it? And a lot of issue there. The reason is commercial lease is a basic, what I can say, the entrance for when you do a commercial real estate for sales, for purchasing, for whatever. So commercial lease with one of them. So I wish you guys can learn something or at least share something if you have. Okay, so I will not talk too much about it in details. I will give you quickly the steps, the process, and in the end. So I wish everyone can have your question. I can try my best to answer. So, or you have any story, you can share with us as well. So at least after today's section, you would understand what's a commercial lease and how to calculate the lease, the rental rate, and what's the lease term, what the basic contents in the agreement to lease. Of course, as I said, it's really a lot of issues there. I cannot go everything in details. We can go something, in the basic one, and later on, of course, when you have something really, some other issue, we can help you. Myself, Sammy, Scott, Tony. So everyone can help you as well. Okay, the first things I can talk quickly is everyone knows. I see even from our WeChat group, and there are a lot of things that every day have an issue between the landlord and tenant is for residential. So the difference I have to mention about here, that the residential lease landlord tenant is different, really totally different from the commercial landlord and tenant. So in residential, because the government protects the tenants, so in many cases, so the tenant has more power than the landlord. But in commercial lease, it's opposite way. Everything, of course, go by the contract. Whatever the contract is a legal contract. So besides that, the landlord have more power. So if something beyond the contract, and the landlord can make their decision, they can do whatever. Let's say, number one major issue is if, let's say in residential, if the tenant make rental payment late or did not pay the rent, so the landlord had to complain the tenant to landlord and tenant board, right? So the process, everyone maybe know, you can use N4, whatever, to landlord tenant board. It goes by a month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months. So it takes a long time. In commercial lease, if the tenant did not pay for the rent in a day or 1 week, mostly in a week, the landlord can say, hey, David, you did not pay the rent. What's wrong? What's the reason? If there's no answer or if no response or no activity to do that, did not say anything to pay back, the landlord saying, I can lock you down. I can lock you down, change the lock. I can seize all the whatever equipment inside within maybe 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks. So the tenant, the landlord have more power than the residential. That's the one major difference. Please remember. So if you are representing tenant, so make sure you have go by the contract, write everything clear in the agreement to lease. So make sure you protect your tenant. If you are the landlord's agent, of course, you know how to do it, right? So anyway, we go through, something like the agreement to lease later on. If we have more time, we can talk about more important key points in the agreement to lease. So the other difference is, of course, the rental term. Commercial lease term, please remember, you can go from 1 year to 5 years, 10 years. I had one many years ago, 20 years lease term, right? That's the lease term, we call the long lease term. But in residential, in many cases, only 1 year, right? 1 year by 1 year. And sometimes our colleagues say, David, I got the tenant asked for the lease term for 2 years, 3 years, whatever. But as a leasing agent, if you represent the landlord, we normally don't suggest take more than 1 year's lease term. The reason is residential is a lot of things uncertain, right? So sometimes maybe the landlord, the owner may have some economic difficulties, some issue, some relocation, they want to sell the property, they want to do whatever. If you have a long lease term, the residential tenant, you cannot kick them out. You cannot say, I'm selling a property, I need you leaving. If you have 2 years, you can ask them to leave after 2 years. If 3 years, you can ask them to leave after 3 years. They say, I got a new buyer, want to stay, want to move in. So within lease term, you cannot get the tenant out and say, because you are moving in or the new owner moving in. No, there's no way. So that's the lease term important. Please remember, okay? And also the third point is the rental rate. In commercial rental rate, as I said just now, it goes through 3 years, 5 years, or even 20 years. You can specify the rental rate every year. Let's say the first year $1, second year $2, whatever. So you can spell out in agreement lease. So in this case, you will see the lease rate will be negotiated or discussed, but in the offer before, everything accepted. Sometimes the people ask, like option to renew. As I said just now, 5 years plus 5. That means 5 years fixed term. Fixed term means every year the rental rate is already fixed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that's called fixed term. Option to renew. What option? Option, that means you have the right to renew the lease. So renew lease, what's the rental rate? So in most cases, some people they do. I think see few of them they specify in option to renew, put down also the rental rate. But in most cases, no, we don't keep that open. But of course, keep that open does not mean the rent should be free or whatever. No, the rental rate will be depending on the market. Let's say after 5 years lease term ends, the market is still the same. So of course, the basic rent will be on that last year's base rent. So depending on the market, if the market going up again, of course you can negotiate. The landlord can negotiate at a better higher rate, right? Than the final 5 years lease rate. Otherwise, if the market coming down, the tenant can negotiate, ask for less lease rate, rental rate, right? So that's called the rental rates depend on the market. So option to renew, always please remember, normally we don't put down anything. Otherwise, you put one clause. We have one clause there in the agreement lease. That means anything depend on that market, if not negotiated by both parties, we need arbitration to make decision. But in last over 20 years, I never seen anything goes through arbitration yet. Neither the landlord make the decision, neither the tenant make a decision, right? So if they don't want it, option to renew, I quickly, right? Option to renew, please remember, option to renew always protect the tenant. The tenant has a right whether to renew it or not renew it. But the landlord cannot oppose to the tenant's decision, right? That's an issue. Please remember. And also the other issue, of course, maybe in most cases, the use, because usually commercial users say sometimes used for retail, for food related, for automotive related, or whatever the use. In many cases, commercial lease, the use cannot be changed either, right? Of course, it go by zoning by law. You have to go to city by law. They have the specific use for that. Please remember. So that's the difference between the residential and commercial lease. Please remember. A lot of issues there. We do not, talk too much about it anyway. So next one, in most cases, as I said, it's the people that always ask, oh, David, I got the client, I want to look for something for open the restaurant, open the garage. I think last week, one of the agents said they have a client looking for something over 5,000 to open automatic, and like a garage with vehicle repairs or something like that. But when you are asked by the client, you have to know such kind of use is still available or not. This is important, right? So if it's nothing, let's say some people even ask for daycare. I think a week ago, or college asked what they open a daycare as well. So some kind of specific use is not easy to get it. So that's the reason I said everyone in our broker, if you have such client, you have to make sure such use is available in the market. Otherwise, don't waste your time here, right? So that's important to see the client use always. And as some people say, like a coffee shop, I think when I call it, say, the downtown, maybe open a coffee shop. If you are going to find something for the new location, for the new use, such as coffee shop or a little restaurant, it's not easy. I will suggest you to talk to the client. Why don't you get ready to take over whatever existing business there? Sometimes the business may close down. They can discount, or maybe they sell in half price. So in that way, the use you can carry on, right? When you carry on the use, also the equipment whatever already there. So in that way, save your client the money, save your client the time as well. If you are going to apply for a new use to the city, it will take a lot of time to do that. Sometimes 1 month, 2 months, or even in the 3 months. So the use normally you have to be discussed with the client as well. All right. So when you are asked to look for something, always is the location. You need to find whether the user allowed it by the first thing by the landlord. Sometimes the plaza, right? Shopping mall, shopping plaza. First thing is the landlord. Second will be management office. The third will be the city permit department to make sure those kind of use already allowed it, right? And when you are ready to find something, some location space already ready for your client, the use, okay, you as a lease buyer agent, please remember, you always ask your client what kind of facility so far it already is in the premises, or if you need some upgraded power capacity, or even need some extra use, you need to remember that to talk to the leasing agent or talk to the landlord. So in that way, we will make your client more easier to do it, right? So that's the first thing you have to remember when you look for some commercial lease property that's used. That's one of them, right? Second, of course, and the same thing like residential. When you are ready to help your client, always you have to make sure the location is good for them or not. Because you, let's say, already the people told you, as I said just now, they want to open a coffee shop or cafeteria in downtown because they want to sell to the people, what we call the target market customer. Let's say young people, university students. So in that way, you feel something. Location is good for your client. So even if the client does not know anything, you give them the suggestion. The location-wise for the young people, of course, will be in the downtown commercial court, like close to the university, right? If some other different use, let's say you are doing some Chinese restaurant, right? Of course, you don't need to go to downtown. You have to go to Scarborough, Markham, Richmond Hill. So that's a different location. You, as an agent, you need to suggest to the client, right? And in that case, as I said just now, so if the client told you, David, I want to open a sushi restaurant, I want to open a Chinese restaurant. So in that way, you have to make sure the client, if they carry on the franchise or they're doing something individual, right? So if that the customer, as I said just now, for target market, the target customer, you have to see who are there. If the Chinese restaurant, of course, as a Scarborough, Richmond Hill, in that way, so you will look for something like this. And always location-wise is very important to your client. If you open something like something coffee shop in a small street, how can you make money, right? How can you make a survive for those kind of business? So always give your client great suggestion, whatever your client will know how to operate, run it, right? In many cases, in the street plaza, shopping mall, in commerce district, those kind of location are always good for commercial leasing for your client as well. So that's a location-wise. Please remember the same thing like residential. We're always talking about location, right? So that's one thing to your client as well. The third point is, whenever you are asked, David, I want to look for some space for setting up, opening my business, you need to qualify your client. The same thing like the buy residential house. How can you afford it? Can you afford it? So you need to ask the client, what's their budget? So within that budget, you can look for some kind of listing, whatever you can introduce to your client. So because the location, as I said just now already, the budget, if the higher budget, you have they can afford more rental capability. Of course, you can look for better location. It always the location will be making that the rent better location, the rent will be higher, right? So when you do the budget, what you can calculate, you can ask the client how much per month you want to spend, or how much we normally go by the monthly rental rate. Also the square footage. Sometimes square footage, I need 3,000, 5,000. And in this case, please remember, when you're talking about square footage, when you do something shopping mall, the square footage is different, will be different from whatever you're thinking. So sometimes in some shopping mall, the area called the rental area. Rental area, that means you have to pay for the rent per month per square foot. But sometimes the square foot looks less than what you're thinking. The reason is the usable areas are different. Usable area, that means it's fixed, exact square foot you can use. When it's talking about paying the rental area, in that case, will be the rental area be sharing some common elements. Common elements, let's say hallway, elevator, some other public area, they call sometimes called rental area. I think if some Chinese college, in Pacific Mall, you're talking about some many small store, the rental unit. When you look at that, it's about 300, 400 square foot. But in reality, the tenant has to pay 700 square foot. The reason is, as I said, the sharing of public area. So in that case, if you're a tenant agent, when you look for something like rental area, we say, wow, 700 square foot. In reality, I can only have 300-400 square foot. It looks like something different. So you have to explain to your client. That's the reason you pay for that. Otherwise, you look for something else, right? So the square footage is one of the issue sometimes you're facing too. I remember one of the issue about a few months ago. Our colleague rented this retail area, 5,000 or 6,000 square foot. In the end, they thinking that the square foot is not right, and they had to hire some other specialists to measure the real square footage. So in that case, the landlord and the tenant have agreed to make a compensation about it. So as a leasing agent or tenant agent, you have to make sure everything you know how to handle that as well. Okay. So as I said, if you know the client budget already, whatever, some people set up a new business, as I said just now, and you need help with your clients. And if you can afford to open up a new store, you have to know your business activity, how soon, how long you can, to make your money, right? In setting up new location, new business, it takes about 3 months or 6 months to get back to normal sales. So that's the one way we always suggest our client to make them advice. Otherwise, so if you don't see anything good for your client, you will not suggest the client to go for anything for the location wise or even the rental area. So that's not a good idea. All right. So the budget, you need to do it. This is the important thing. The important thing we say always, as I say, how much does rent? How do you calculate the rent? That's it. Some people really confused. Let's say I saw some listing yesterday. That one of the listing 84,000 square foot. They're asking $1. So in that case, do you think how do you calculate the rent? As an agent, as a listing agent or tenant agent, you have to make sure how do you know that the rent is structured, how they calculate the rent. So first thing, let's do one by one quickly, and we later will go to listing to do the calculation afterward. The rental rate or the lease term, number one is we call it net rent. You're always talking about net rent. Net rent, some other word they call it basic rent. Basic rent that some listings you will see is by square footage. Sometimes by gross rent there as well, right? So in that case, when you see net rent, that means basic rent, the number one. Second will be net rent means you need to also pay the TMI. What is TMI? Another word we call it additional rent. So additional rent, when you look at TMI, you'll be easy to say, but your additional rent you don't know, right? So TMI, that means realty tax. M for sometimes we say management fee, or sometimes some people say maintenance. Normally, in most cases, cross management and maintenance combined together. I means building insurance, the realty insurance. So that's called a TMI additional rent. please remember, when you're talking about agreement to lease, we may say insurance. Some people say, oh, well, the TMI already insurance included. No, that's insurance. That means for the landlord side. So the tenant, even take over, you sign the lease, you need also buy your own insurance. So they call the liability insurance. Please remember. So liability insurance, it goes from 1 million, 2 million. I saw sometimes they ask for 3 to 5 million for the property, depending on the size, depending on how big the property is. So that's called the TMI. Please remember. And the next one is, of course, as I said just now already, not like residential 1-year lease term, right? In many cases, commercial lease term going from 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, 20 years, depends on how your client asks for. So the rental, we call the lease term, if whatever you go by 5 or 10 or 20, it's split to 2 ways. One is called fixed term. Fixed term, and let's say we're always talking about 5 plus 5. That means 5 years fixed term. Option to renew another 5 years. Some people use 3 years plus 3 or 3 years plus 5. It's only totally depend on the landlord and tenant negotiate. So when you're talking about lease term, those lease term you need to remember, right? So in many cases, it's not often to use 1 year lease term. Okay, so please remember that. After everything, net rent, TMI, you already got that what gross rent, total rent, but it's not done yet. Above the net rent and TMI, you always on top of that pay for HST. We call it 13% HST. So in that way, 13% on top, there will be every month when calculated monthly rent, you need to pay the tax. And it's confusion. As I said, sometimes last training said, some people asking, property tax already charged the tax. Why you still HST their tax? But the quick answer, as your listing agent or your tenant agent, please explain to your client. HST, that means service charge. Service charge means the landlord collecting your rent, collecting your net rent, collecting TMI. They need to pay the city property tax. They need to pay the condominium management office for the management fee. So those are providing the services. That service, of course, are subject to HST. So that's the one point. Please remember. If people asking like that, please explain to your client. So I did not see too many clients challenging that. I only have one client many years ago challenging that. So I talked to you in the last session as well. He is a paralegal and say, David, I already paid for the tax. I don't want to pay this. But in the end, I tried my best to explain to them. I said, you can talk to everyone. That's a common practice, or it's also the government request to charge the service charge. So in the end, so that's the paralegal agree to pay for that. So that's something you please remember. We're talking about already how to do the lease, how to look for, how to calculate rental rate. If you are the tenant agent, how do you negotiate good lease? Then a lot of issues we can talk about, but we just go quickly, okay? Because we don't have too much time here. So the same thing like residential offer, how do you negotiate a good, better deal for your client? Number one, you need to be experienced, right? You have to know a lot of things first. If you don't know anything, how can you negotiate? How can you talk to the listening for a good, better deal? So number one, as I said, you need to learn something. You need to get yourself ready to move on to help your client. So if you are, I cannot say a very professional one, but still you already know the basic something already about commercial lease, you are ready to help your client. In many cases, when you negotiate good lease, we always share with our clients. Say you need to see the market. The same thing like CMA, right? When you do the residential and do CMA, if you are doing commercial lease of you, that's what I said just now. You need to know, you have the experience, see the neighborhood, the complex, the area, the same area, what's the rental rate in the market, right? And some listener, I sent it last week, the agent called me. They're asking for $16 per square foot. How much I can offer to them? I said, I did not know that the location. I need to check the location first. So if you don't check the location, how can you offer the rate to that? And number one. Number two is look at the listing. How long the listing already in the market, right? So the longer in the market, that means that this location or this promise is hard to lease. So the longer that stay in there, the better you can ask for the better deal. So that's the same way, right? So you know the market, then you know that the listing there for the period, then you in that way give the discount, ask for the listing agent, top the listing agent. Oh, you have been the listing has been there for already 3 months, 6 months. So my client want to get this unit. What kind of rate do you think I can, you can get me? What expectation from the landlord? That's the one way you can do it. That's the one thing. Secondly, it depends on the it depends on the lease. I always said if you have a longer lease, the long lease term will get a better deal. If you have 5 years lease term and you have 10 years lease term, of course you can negotiate better lease rental rate. And in sometimes what I can say that if the landlord, of course, they have high expectation. If you are a tenant agent, you can talk to the listening agent and say, David, I got your 5 years lease term. For the first year, I can give you whatever the rate a little bit lower under the market. So the second year I can keep the same rate. Maybe from the third year I can keep the increase of the lease, right? Whatever depend on the market. Sometimes the market will give you 50 cents per square foot, or even 75 cents per square foot. Some people they use by $1 per square foot. In some other cases, people always use what? Percentage. That means this area, let's say the market, the rental rate every year increase by 3% or 5%, you can go by the percentage as well. Please remember, right? So always if you know something, in the market already, you are ready can negotiate a better deal with the listing agent. That's important. I already talked about option to renew. Option to renew, that means the tenant has a right after 3 years or 5 years fixed term, you have the option to renew it. So the renew option, the lease, the rental rate, in most cases, is not specified there already. Some people I saw they put down as well in option to renew, and this first year or second year every year spell out as well. But some people say go by percentage. In option to renew, now the rental rate cannot go above, let's say 3% per year or whatever. Some people use that one. But again, in many cases, we do not specify the rental rate. In our clause, as I say, it's option to renew will depend on the market rate. And if not settled, we go by arbitration. So that's the one clause we're using there, right? We already talked about this process and steps and how to do, look for the rental space or the market. So here I can quickly go to some of agreement to lease. Here some few things I can share with you first. Then we can later on we go by to the one listing to do the actual work to see what the listing look like and how do you get prepared up as there as well. Okay, let's see. Basically, the agreement lease, they have some key elements in the lease. I will go quickly as here first because a lot of issue, a lot of clause in agreement lease, not like residential lease. We have 1 page, 2 page, right? We have more lease clauses in agreement lease for commercial. So first one is again depend on the use, right? As I said just now, if your client open up the restaurant, coffee shop in a plaza, in a shopping mall, the number one important for you as a tenant client, you need to put the one clause here we call it exclusive right. That means exclusive right in the same plaza, in the same shopping mall. Let's say we are doing a sushi restaurant. I will put in the clause, they say, that's the only sushi restaurant can be allowed in this area. I mean, in this complex, in shopping mall, as a commercial plaza. If some others, restaurants, similar restaurants, sushi restaurant open, it should not be allowed. So we call exclusive right. And in sometimes, if the people say, oh, the landlord say, I cannot offer you this. The reason is in some commercial plaza, every individual unit is occupied with different owner. So in that way, the landlord say, David, I cannot control it. So it's up to you. You open up the restaurant, sushi restaurant, whatever, it's up to you. But you can do it, but I cannot offer you exclusively. So that's sometimes, please remember, if you face something like this, you need to be cautious, right? Talk to the client, and you cannot do that, okay? The first thing. The second issue is, in many cases, we call the right for assignment. The reason is commercial lease for assignment, because who knows, when you open up a business, you open a restaurant, you go in a coffee shop, you already signed 5 years or 10 years lease term, but during the 5 years or 10 years, it's sometimes you don't know whether you can continue the business or not. So you need an offer to lease. You need to make one clause. The tenant has a right to assign for the lease. When you sell the business, you sell to somebody else, means that lease can be assigned to someone else. Of course, in many cases, should get the consent from the landlord. If you have such clause in the agreement lease, you have such right there. So that's the one right of assignment. The third thing important for always for if your tenant agent, please remember some of the business and for the client, and because they set up new business, right? And they need what? They need we call it fishery period. That means renovation. They need to go the leasehold improvement. They need a month, 2 months, 3 months. So they need time to fix, renovate it before opening up the business. I remember many years ago, I got one tenant. They need to spend 8 months to set up the business. So if the 8 months, that means they cannot open up the store. So what is they can do? They cannot pay for for the rent that's really costs a lot of money. So in that way, you can ask the landlord put on the lease and need free rent period. Free rent period, that means from everything from 1 month or to 2 months, 3 months. And that one I said just now over 20 years ago, they asked for 8 months free rent period. So always depend on how long you need the time to set up for business. As a listing agent, please remember this is one thing, right? Listing agent will ask, oh, David, you got client set up the business for such, you ask for 3 months free rent period. Why you ask for that long? You can ask the tenant, ask the tenant agent. number one, how much you're going to spend on the renovation. So you find out one by one, then you can talk to the landlord to make decision whether it's worth to keep free rent period or it's reasonable or not. So you make decision after that. Again, as I said, that 8 months free rent period, what my client was suggesting, they give the proposal to landlord. I will spend $1 million to upgrade, to set up, to for the leasehold improvement. So the landlord is happy. When you put money, put everything in there, that means the property value is increased. So why not the landlord give free rent period? Not only free rent period, in that case, the landlord give allowances for leasehold improvement, because leasehold improvement for renovation, no matter what, later on that belongs to the landlord, the owner's estate. So as I say, to upgrade the value of the property, so the landlord even so happy to give allowances. Let's say $2, $5 per square foot give allowances. So that's it, one of the way sometimes the landlord do. So as a tenant agent, please remember, if you have something like this, you talk to the client, make sure the period they need it, or the time they need it, and that the fund you're going to prepare for that renovation. Of course, the time frame as well. So in that way, you can talk to the landlord. I saw some free rent period. It's very short, 2 weeks. I saw the one case in only 2 weeks, because the reason is, say, it's a warehousing. You don't need to do anything. You only put some shelves or whatever up already. 2 weeks is enough for you. So in that way, some tenant get only 2 weeks free rent. Always please remember, free rent period you can do 2 ways. One's net rent free or gross rent free. Always depend on case by case. So I cannot say which one is reasonable, which one is not. So always our colleagues say, David, is that reasonable? Is that legal? In commercial lease, as I said at the beginning, everything put in writing. If everything in writing signed, it's a legal contract. Nothing they say reasonable or unreasonable. If you make decision, both parties agree, that's already become the contract. All right. I already talked about just now already that the net rent TMI, the landlord TMI, they have landlord's insurance, but the tenant, if you are using the unit or using this premise for your business, you need also insurance coverage. We call it tenant's liability insurance. It's going from 2 million, 3 million, as I say, even $5 million insurance coverage. Some people ask, wow, David, $5 million, that's really a lot. Don't worry, okay? Insurance premium, even 2 million, 3 million, or 5 million, the annual insurance premium is not too much different, not by 1,000 or whatever, right? Maybe a few hundred to 1,000, whatever. That depend on the use and depend on the liability, how far from there. So that's please remember. Sometimes, please remember, we at the beginning I saw it already. Commercially, it's not like residential lease. It takes a lot of complicated issue, and many issues may be, as a tenant agent, you have to be prepared for that. And we always say that in agreement lease for commercial, we need tenant lawyer to review it. And even in every agreement lease, I put the one condition there, a condition upon tenant lawyer to review and approve within whatever days, 3 days, 5 days, whatever. That's important, okay? Otherwise, as a tenant agent, we are not legal specialists. So everything legal advice should go by their lawyer, okay? Please remember that. Most important is that the landlord I can see that let's say commercial plaza or shopping mall, in many major commercial properties, the landlord has their own standard lease. They call the landlord standard form. In that way, if you are a tenant agent, please remember, ask for listing agent. Say, the landlord has already, the standard is ready? If sometimes the landlord listing agent says, oh, David, the landlord has no standard lease, we go by agreement lease. So in that way, you be take it easy, right? If you have landlord standard form, or say, oh, after signing agreement lease, the landlord will provide standard lease. So if you something you feel like that in the agreement lease, I think we put some clause already there. In agreement lease, in the end, we have one condition, also condition upon the tenant lawyer to review the landlord standard lease within whatever day, 3-5 days upon the receipt. So that's important to protect your tenant. Otherwise, if you don't have anything like that, you sign agreement lease and you're going to sign a landlord standard lease. Something goes wrong, hey, David, you are in trouble, right? You did not protect me. You did not protect the landlord. That's the one thing, please remember, don't do that, right? And in agreement lease, of course, the other issue is very often happen. Even that a few days ago, that one of the colleagues said, David, within the agreement lease, that there's one clause that the tenant say, all the maintenance for, let's say, air conditioning, heating, and like whatever inside the premises, the repair, the manager, who's going to be responsible. So in our sample clause, we always say tenant to be responsible for maintenance, repair, whatever. But only one item we put in the sample list. If something goes wrong to be need to replace, we call it replacement on HVAC system. HVAC system means heating system, air conditioning, ventilation, those kind of those equipment. Because those equipment cost a lot of money, sometimes from 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. We saw some roof air conditioner or roof heater system cost a lot of money. If something goes to be replaced, so in our clause we already mentioned, the cost will be paid by the landlord. So in that way, the tenant feel at ease. But if you are listening, in some cases, say this kind of thing, the landlord does not want to, pay for full cost. What you can do is in that way, in that agreement list, I will suggest you write something else. So the replacement cost should be shared with the tenant and the landlord according to the proportion of the lease term. The reason is because the replacement cost, let's say 50,000, that the equipment lifespan will go by normally 15 years to 10 to 15 years or 20 years, depending on the equipment. So if my lease only 5 years lease or 3 years lease term to go, of course, I only pay for 3 years lease terms portion. So that's the one clause. From time to time, maybe you need it, or otherwise maybe at landlord cost. To make sure if you have something, feel something equipment not working properly, I suggest as a tenant agent, you would ask the client before occupancy, or you can put in the offer as well. The tenant has a right to inspect the equipment to make sure everything working in good order, in working order first. Otherwise, after you move in, everything goes broken down, then you are going to repair whatever. That's another cost. Of course, for replacement is another story, right? So that's the one thing in commercial lease, please remember. Not like residential lease, okay? Residential in our office, before, schedule one say everything after $100, below $100 with tenant to pay. But in commercial lease, no way, okay? Even that for the residential lease for $100, the payment, we don't suggest you to do that now. And because according to the law, maintenance repair should be at the landlord's cost, right? So that's the one thing. Just I remind everyone here as well. And other issue is I already put here as well. Sometimes if you are carry on the existing business, let's say you buy the coffee shop, you buy the group restaurant, in the coffee shop, restaurant, they have all the equipment there, right? They have a stove, they have fridge, there's cooling, they have a built-in whatever equipment there already. So in that way, if you are tenant agent, please list down those kind of equipment with this to be used by the tenant. And the ownership sometimes depend on the business, right? If it's self business, in many cases, the ownership is still the previous business owner, not the landlord. So if you, as a leasing agent, of course, you have to ask the landlord as well. And those kind of equipment belong to who? Tenant or the landlord? So that use should be put in the offer as well. Put a list of equipment owned by the tenant or by the existing owner. So in that way, there's no misunderstanding, no other misleading there. So this is one thing, please remember. And also with in the commercial lease, you have one clause as well. You need a signboard, right? Record for the many plaza or shopping mall, they have put the business restaurant name or whatever in the signboard there, signature, right? So you also can specify that as well. So that's not a big issue, but still as a tenant, you need to know something like this as well. All right. And I already mentioned about it in this commercial lease. We involved a lot of specialists, not only agent, and have lawyer, sometimes have the content. We have also inspector. They have also architect and an insurance broker. Of course, sometimes banker, lender as well, and a lot of different contractors we maybe need for commercial lease as well. So in that way, if you are tenant agent, you have to some kind of such contacts in case your client asks for, you can introduce to them or let them to make decision. All right. So that kind of thing already I will go quickly for something else. And as when we do the such kind of section, because I always talking about on the listing agent and the buyer agent or tenant agent as well. So in many cases, we cannot go by one single say, oh, I'm only representing buyer, I'm only representing landlord. So when I'm doing such kind of section, I will always talking about both sides. Okay. Here there's something else I can go quickly because I need to go to listening to share with everyone. If something like this kind of slide later on you need to know, I will share with you as well. Okay, the conventional MS data form. I suggest you go to our office website. We have the list there already, so everything you can see from there as well. And also that when you do the web form of sky slope, when you create a transaction, all the forms will be there. If you're a listing agent, you will know what forms are required. If you're a buyer, tenant, or agent, you can also need to see all the files as well. So here that the MLS data I said already, what net rent, TMI, whatever. So I will go quickly to that one. Listen, here are some other things I don't have time to talk about now. And let's move on to the next one because I don't have too much time here. Here also agreement to lease all the clause, some basic condition, important key element. The too many content here. I cannot share with you anymore now. Okay, let's go stop for this one. Let's go to the one listing first to make sure real thing we need to go into. Let me stop this one first and share another one. Just a second. I'm not sure if I can share it. Okay. Can you guys see this one? Can you see that this listing? Anyone? Hello, everyone. Can you see that listing? I cannot hear. This is one of the listing I cannot hear anyone say so.
Yes,
You
we
can
can see it, but it
Okay.
is quite small though. Have to zoom
Quite
in.
small. Let me see. How can I make it bigger? Quite small.
Or I can zoom in. It's okay, I guess.
Yeah, you can zoom in. Okay, let's see. I talk about this listing. This listing you look at here. Too small, really. Let me see. You can see better? Yeah, here, look at here. That's what I said just now. When the listing asks for $1 per square foot, look here. Second that rent, okay? So that does not mean that's only $1. I said in last section, they say that's agent only put for something like for bidding or whatever. So it's up to the tenant agent to look for the market, to check the neighborhood, check the market, what's the real net rent in the area. So maybe $10, maybe $15. So don't go by this. Okay, number one here. Number two is when you look at listing, you have to see what kind of use. Here, look here. They call it warehousing. That means called industrial warehousing for use. At beginning, I said already, the use important for your client. If they say warehousing, you just use warehousing. If they say for food related, you go to food related. We see something like this here, okay? Please remember. And sometimes for retail, they may say retail, or sometimes they say cafeteria, we can, whatever, you can say so. That's number one. A few things. The another thing is, that's the square footage. Please remember here, this unit this area is called 64,000 square foot. So that's the total area. Based on your client requirement, they say the size of the unit, that's the one way you can look for that, okay? Please remember. Also here, for many cases, in the industrial warehousing, they have percentage. You see, office area, 3%. 97% in warehousing. So depend on the client again. Some people say, I need a showroom. In it, this way, it's too small. So you will look for something, maybe 20%, 15%, 20, 30% for this office area. That means showroom, whatever. Then the rest will be warehousing. So that's the kind of uh, content you need to remember that. Also, another issue is for many cases for warehousing, look at here, you call it chalk level. What that mean? Chalk level, that means loading dock, loading door. So because this one 64,000, you see they have 13 loading dock. Chalk level, that means, right? So again, your client, if I say, hey, David, I need a loading dock 1 or 2, when you're searching on MLS, this is one way you can look for that. All right, please remember. The other issue is if warehousing, look at here. Wow, this is the highest one I saw. They call it clear height. I mean the ceiling height, 40 feet. That's really, really high. It's not too much. They seldom can see it like this. Normally 20 feet, 28 feet. I saw some 30 feet higher, but this one 30 feet high. So if it's right for your client, maybe it's good. That's good one as well, right? So that's the one thing need to know. Let me see the other issue here. The other issue is you look at the client remark. This is sometimes you see they spelled out everything in there. So if something really good to your client, just go ahead. If not, there's a different. So it may not be to give that anything to your client either, right? So they tell you everything, whatever here. So as a listing agent, of course, whatever you want to let other people know, you need to write down the client remarks here, okay? So the important is for us, please remember, as I said at the beginning already, and next section, I will try to talk about commission issue, right? So we are working self-employed. Look at here. For residential lease, residential sales, commission 2.5% or half month's rent, right? In the commercial lease, look at here. They will see 6% for year one. What means 6%? That means 6% for net rent. Remember, $1 per month, per year, times 56,000 square foot. That means $56,000 per year. You get 6% times that. That's your commission for year one. Of course, as I said, $1 for lease rent is not. It should be 15, maybe something like $18. I don't know. You need to check this area. So as a listing agent, if you see something, if you are listing for lease, represent the landlord. So 6% for year one, that means you will get 12% per year for two agents. Normally go by half and half, right? So then that's year number one. From year number two, look at here, 2.5% net for at 10 years. That means if a lease term for 10 years, so every year from year two to year 10 will be 2.5% of net rent. So we calculate your commission. So in that way, please remember whatever commission here, but that's a different here, right? You need to write it down in the form 324. 324 spells out the commission, how much you get paid. Otherwise, you don't specifically write down anything like this, maybe you work for nothing. I don't wish you do something like that. All right, okay? So that's something you need to know from the listing here. Again, as I said, if the listing agent, you know how to do the listing, those kind of things first, like prepare the rental rate and prepare the lease term, prepare commission as a listing agent, what form you need as well. As for the tenant agent, always use important your client, the size, the square footage, and also the lease term is good either. In the end, of course, the commission. Commission, you need to know how much you will get this commission from here. So that's the thing you please remember. This is one example for this. Of course, we have a listing for office space or retail space or even restaurant kind of space. So more or less, they're similar like this. How do you structure the rent rate? How to get the size? How to get the commission? That's those kind of things. So I will not share too much here because we really don't have time. We already getting the time over already. So I think at the least we know the steps, we know the process, we know that the rental rate is kind of thing, and you need to know the basic already. In case you need help, and again, as I said, you can come back to talk to me, talk to Sammy or Scott or Tony as well. So let's call for that my section here today, and I will give the 5 to 10 minutes for everyone. Do you have any question? I will here try my best to answer you. Okay, so let's stop this one sharing. Let's open your mic. We talk about whatever you need to know. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So again, tomorrow, Thursday, Sammy will be talking about the agreement to lease or agreement to purchase for residential. And next Wednesday, I'll be talking about commission issue as well. Okay, so let's open your mic, talk about it or share your story as well. Thank you for everyone. You can share anything, whatever we can. Let me see, anyone put the word here. Commercially, sometimes really not easy. Not like, but if you are representing a landlord, of course, you tell the landlord, you are the boss. Not like residential, right? But if you represent the tenant, always make sure everything spells out in agreement to lease. So you don't miss anything. Otherwise, if you don't protect your client properly, later on you will be one to be complained, right? Please. Any question? Anything that you want to talk about it? Our office template, I mean, the agreement lease, we put most clause already there, but the case by case, I always said you need to put something else according to your client's requirement, okay? And then in the clause, I'm scheduling number clause 1 and 2. These two, you can only use 1 or 2. You cannot use both the clause because that when I put something there, it's coming from net rent plus TMI, or this only the gross rent only. So in most cases, if the lease going from 3 years or 5 years term, we call it going to long form. If you know that, please use long form. Otherwise, if you are using gross rent at say 1 year's term or less than 3 years term, you can use short form as well. We can have a short form, they are in what form, so you can use that maybe much easier. But I always suggest maybe long form better because it spells out every year's lease rate, the rent rate, right? That's better. Anyone get something? Share in your story. For agreement lease for irrevocable time, please remember, not like a residential 24 hours. Sometimes need 48 hours. Sometimes they ask for 72 hours. And in many some other commercial brokerage like Cushman, CBRE, those agents, they don't work on weekend. Please remember, in that case, if you get offered in the weekend or week, more days for the irrevocable time. All right. Okay, we got 2 more minutes if you have anything. Otherwise, we can call for the day. If you have something like residential, you can share with us as well. If you still you are, I mean, don't have time to do the commercial lease, then you can find some of your colleague. You can work together. You can, in case you need it, I will assign you someone. You can talk to colleagues and work together to do something as well. One thing always I got a lot of question from our colleagues say automobile related is hard to get anything for setup. So if some people looking for, oh, my client want to open a garage or automobile repair or car wash, something like that, it's not easy to find something for newly set up. But in that way, you can suggest your client, I can't, it's better to take over for existing business. Otherwise, you will wait for too long because it's not easy to apply, get approved from the city, right? It's not really not easy. Yeah, one thing like I didn't remind you, if the use is not good for your client, if you did not put anything in the offer to say verify the use with the city, once you sign the contract, if it already become effective, if the use are not good for the client, then you can hardly get it back off from the deal because you sign the contract no matter what. So that's the reason I said the use should be verified, should be approved, not only by the landlord management office, should be verified with the city. Otherwise, if say the city say, no, that for no car wash in this location, no automobile related for this, no daycare for this area, then you are in trouble, okay? So please remember, always important, the use is number one for your client, okay? Looks like we don't have any other question then. So let's call for the day. And I wish you guys come back tomorrow for service training section regarding the offer, how to prepare the offer, how to do authentic sign. So thank you everyone again. Talk to you next week, next Wednesday, 11 to 12 again. Thank you. Bye now.